ya? Welcome to Happy Rails to ya. My name is Hobo Pep, and I've been riding the rails looking for an adventure to share with you. Boy, have I got a story for you today. Let me find a place to rest these weary bones. We'll see what treasure I've got for you in my bindle. You know, my hobo sack. Come along. Welcome back to my hobo jungle. I hope you've had a good week. I hopped a rattler to the Midwest this week and found some work and fortunately made it back in time to share another adventure with you. Now, today we continue our special train-themed Black History Month series with an adventure about an African-American hero by the name of Harriet Tubman, who was known as the Moses of her people for helping slaves escape to freedom. Now, she was born into slavery in 1822, but escaped in 1849 and helped other slaves escape from slave states in the southern United States to free states up north and Canada via the Underground Railroad. Now, she continued this work until the beginning of the American Civil War in 1861, during which time she worked for a Union Army as a cook, a nurse, an armed scout, and a spy. Now, the Underground Railroad was not an actual railroad, and it wasn't literally underground. It consisted of meeting points, secret routes, transportation, and safe houses maintained by folks wanting to help slaves escape to freedom. Now, we'll talk more about why it was called a railroad after we read this week's adventure. Now, this week's adventure is called Aunt Harriet's Underground Railroad in the Sky, and it was written and illustrated by the Caldecott Medal and Coretta Scott King Award-winning author, Faith Ringgold. Now, as we read this adventure, pay close attention to how Aunt Harriet Tubman helps Cassie retrace the steps escaping slaves took on the real Underground Railroad in hopes to reunite with her brother, BB. Now, Ringgold says when Harriet was ill and near her death, she had dreams of flying to freedom with the help of a circle of ladies dressed in white, and she used this dream for inspiration for this story. Come along, let's read. Aunt Harriet's Underground Railroad in the Sky, written and illustrated by Faith Ringgold. One day, my baby brother, BB, and I were flying among the stars, way, way up. So far up, the mountains looked like pieces of rock candy, and the oceans looked like tiny cups of tea. We came across an old ramshackle train in the sky. A tiny woman in a conductor's uniform appeared on the steps of the train and announced the schedule. All aboard! All aboard! Maryland, Delaware, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, Niagara Falls, Canada. All aboard! All aboard! Hundreds of bedraggled men, women, and children filled the sky and boarded the dusty old wooden train. No one spoke. It was like watching a silent movie. Come on, Cassie, BB said, jumping up on the train. Let's take a ride. Get off that train, BB. I'll tell Mommy and Daddy, and you'll be in a world of trouble, I yelled. But the train quickly moved off through the sky and disappeared. All I could see now were flashing lights, sending a threatening message through a sea of clouds. Go free north or die. Go free north or die. Go free north or die. BB, come back. Mommy and Daddy will never forgive me for letting you go, I screamed. Then the woman conductor's voice came like a soft whisper in my ear. "Hello, Cassie. I am Harriet Tubman. People call me Aunt Harriet because I take care of them. During slavery, I carried hundreds of men, women, and children to freedom on the Underground Railroad and never lost a passenger." "Let me tell you about slavery, Cassie," Aunt Harriet said. "We were brought here from Africa as slaves to work long hours on plantations for no pay. More of us died on the ships coming over than ever reached these shores. If we tried to escape and were caught, we might have a foot cut off or get sold away from our families. And then we never saw our families and friends again." A legal or church marriage was not allowed, so instead a man and a woman would jump the broom. It was against the law for a slave to learn to read or write, or have a meeting even to preach the word of God. Every 100 years, that old train will follow the same route I traveled on the Underground Railroad so that we will never forget the cost of freedom. Sometimes the train is a farmer's wagon. Sometimes it is a hearse covered with flowers. Inside, a live slave hides in a coffin. You missed this train, Cassie, but you can follow, always one stop behind. When we reach freedom in Canada, you will be reunited with BB. Cassie, though you can fly, being a slave will suck you to the ground like quicksand. You will have to walk many miles through the woods and waters on blistered feet. And there will be bounty hunters eager to collect the reward on your head. Follow the North Star. In daylight, look for moss growing on the side of the tree that faces north. Along the way, there will be Underground Railroad agents to give you a place to stay, clean clothes, and food. But until you reach Canada, you are not safe. Go and don't turn back. And remember, if you are caught, you will be severely punished. First, you must escape from the slave plantation. Tell no one. Wait until night falls so you will not be seen. Then follow the trail through the woods to a gray farmhouse on the river. Your first night will be the hardest. Listen carefully to the song of the birds. When you are in danger, their song will become screams that only you can hear. Then you must stop and head in the opposite direction. When you lie down to rest, you will hear me sing the old spiritual. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt land. Tell old Pharaoh, let my people go. Let me lullaby you to sleep. When I stop singing and you hear the birds scream, wake up and move on. I reached the gray farmhouse on the river. I slept in the farmer's attic. It was dark and scary. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling like gray ghosts. But the farmer and his wife were very kind. There was a note under the pillow. Dear Cassie, I am very frightened, but I am a big boy and will not turn back. Love, BB. Then Aunt Harriet's voice came like a gust of wind. Follow the river north until you reach a clapboard house with green shutters and a red brick chimney. There will be a blind railroad agent who will ask you to sing a song. You will sing, Go Down, Moses, way down in Egypt land. Tell old Pharaoh, let my people go. She will give you food and a place to sleep. By nightfall, you must be on your way through the woods. I found BB's baseball cap floating in a swamp. It was worn to shreds. I squeezed the mud out of it. Leave the cap, Cassie, Aunt Harriet's whispering voice said. Go on to a weather-beaten frame house with a star quilt flung on the roof. If you don't see the quilt, hide in the woods until it appears. Then it is safe to go in. The next night, follow the road to the bridge, several miles away. I traveled through the woods and swamps. I was cold, wet, and very hungry, but I could not turn back. When I reached the bridge, I hid in a graveyard on a hill overlooking the river. It was there I found BB's toy soldiers and a set of his baseball cards buried alongside the grave of a boy BB's age. I was too afraid to cry. I lay awake till I heard Aunt Harriet's familiar whisper. Wait for a railroad agent disguised as a grave digger. He will say, I bring you a ticket for the railroad. Now the tears came streaming down my cheeks like rain. I would see BB soon, soon, soon. In a tiny yellow house on the edge of the city, a little girl my age gave me a ticket for the steam car and sewed a fake pass to freedom she had made on my undershirt. It read, Cassie Louise Lightfoot, freeborn in New York. Show that to anyone who tries to take you back to the slaves' plantation, she said. I reached the back door of a shoemaker's house and knocked 3 times. That time I slept in a secret room behind a bookcase. BB had been there and left another note. Dear Cassie, I have a new baby sister. She was born today. Her name is Freedom. Her mother got sick and went to heaven. She let me carry baby Freedom on my back. Love, BB. After a few days' rest, I started out again with new shoes the shoemaker made me. Move on, Cassie, Aunt Harriet's voice told me. You are very close to the border of the free state of Pennsylvania. Look for the letter P written on a rock facing north, but still beware of bounty hunters. They can kidnap you at any time. Until you reach Canada, you are not safe. In New York, a bookbinder hid me in a secret compartment he had built into his wagon. In a downpour of rain, he delivered me to a funeral parlor. There was a funeral going on, so no one noticed me. The undertaker gave me a withered rose BB had left, pressed in a book with a note. Dear Cassie, we stayed at the house of a millionaire. He gave Aunt Harriet a bunch of money. We will never be hungry again. Love, BB. The undertaker gave me a fresh-cut rose, hid me in a coffin in his hearse, and took me to Niagara Falls. Now I was just over the bridge from Canada. Niagara Falls looked like a giant tea party with a billion cups of steaming hot tea being poured to a resounding applause. The steam from the falls formed a soft blanket that lifted me up, up, up above the falls and across the bridge to Canada. I could fly. I was free. I could see Aunt Harriet and BB with baby Freedom still tied to his back, the passengers on the Underground Railroad, and women all dressed in white flying in a huge circle around them. We're free! We have shook the lion's paw! Aunt Harriet yelled in a voice that shot through the air like a joyous bolt of lightning. Go down, Moses, BB said, and let my people go, the others sang out. I kissed BB over and over, and I made him promise he'd never, ever leave me again. I love you, Cassie, but I had to go, BB said. Freedom is more important than just staying together. And what's more, I got to ride on the Underground Railroad with Harriet Tubman. Now I know what our great great grandparents survived when they were children. That day there was a big feast and a quilt celebrating the 100th anniversary of Harriet Tubman's first flight to freedom hung in the sky. People came to eat, dance, and sing praise to Aunt Harriet for taking us from slavery to freedom and for being the Moses of her people. The end. That's Aunt Harriet's Underground Railroad in the sky. Boy, wasn't that a fascinating tale! With Aunt Harriet's help leading her through the escape route of the Underground Railroad, Cassie was able to finally be reunited with her brother, BB. Now, I promised you before we read this adventure that I'd explain why the Underground Railroad was called a railroad when it wasn't a real train at all, although some slaves heading for freedom would sometimes travel part of the journey by rail. Now, according to John Rankin, it was called underground because those who took passage on it disappeared from public view as real as if they had gone into the ground. After the fugitive slaves entered a depot on the road, no trace of them could be found. They were secretly passed from one depot to another until they arrived at a destination where they were able to remain free. Now, it was referred to as a railroad using railroad terminology because that was the transportation system that was in use in the early to mid 1800s. Folks who helped slaves find the Underground Railroad, they were called agents, while guides like Harriet Tubman, they were called conductors. Hiding places, they were known as stations, and station masters, they hid escaping slaves in the homes. Slaves, they would receive a ticket or a way out of slavery, and these escaping slaves were referred to either as passengers or sometimes cargo. Now, the Underground Railroad was often known as the Freedom Train or the Gospel Train because the wheels would keep on turning and the slaves journeyed toward freedom or heaven or the promised land of Canada. Well, that's it for now. I know that was a lot of information for us to talk about today, but I encourage you to ask your parents to help you read more about Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad. Until next time, so long. Thank you for joining me for today's adventure. I hope you enjoyed. Always remember, continue riding the rails of your imagination as it will take you on an endless number of adventures around the world. Until next time, this is Hobo Pap saying so long as I go hop on a rattler in search of our next adventure. Happy reels to you.